All right, buckle up, UPSC aspirants. We're diving headfirst into today's current affairs, February 21st, 2025, with our signature deep dive. This is part one, so make sure you stick around for all the insights and analysis.
You got it. Ready to break down those complex topics and make them UPSC digestible?
Absolutely. Now remember, this is a daily series, so some topics might ring a bell from previous episodes.
And that's a good thing. Think of it as reinforcement, building that solid foundation for exam success.
Okay, let's kick things off with a topic that's been dominating headlines ragging on college campuses. Sadly, we've seen a surge in tragic incidents recently, really highlighting the urgent need for solutions.
It's heartbreaking. We're talking about young lives being shattered, and it's clear we need a multi-pronged approach to tackle this menace.
Now, just to be on the same page, the University Grants Commission, or UGC, defines ragging as any act that violates a student's dignity physically or mentally.
Right, and that includes everything from verbal abuse and humiliation to physical assaults and even those seemingly harmless pranks that can have devastating psychological effects.
And the statistics are truly alarming. The UGC itself has reported a shocking number of ragging-related suicides and complaints.
It paints a grim picture of what's happening on some campuses, and it underscores the need for decisive action.
So what's holding us back from eradicating this problem? Why does ragging persist despite all the efforts to curb it?
Well, one major hurdle is weak enforcement. The UGC's oversight hasn't been as effective as it could be, and many cases are resolved internally within institutions without facing proper consequences.
It's like sweeping the problem under the rug instead of addressing it head-on.
Exactly. And there's also the chilling effect of fear. Victims often hesitate to report incidents because they fear retaliation from seniors.
Makes sense, especially when those seniors are the ones creating that hostile environment in the first place.
It creates a culture of silence that allows ragging to continue unchecked. Another issue is a lack of awareness. We need to go beyond those perfunctory anti-ragging seminars and really educate students about the severity of this issue.
We need to change the mindset, make it clear that ragging is not some harmless rite of passage, but a serious offense with severe consequences.
Now, India does have an anti-ragging framework in place. The UGC has its own set of regulations, including the affidavit system.
That's where students have to submit 3 anti-ragging affidavits during their course, basically pledging not to engage in or tolerate ragging.
It's an attempt to create a sense of individual responsibility, but its effectiveness is debatable.
And then there's the Raghavan Committee, which put forward a bunch of recommendations for strengthening anti-ragging measures.
The committee really pushed for stricter enforcement, criminalizing ragging, and holding institutions accountable for failing to prevent it.
It was a comprehensive approach, but the implementation has been patchy at best.
There have been some positive steps, though. We're seeing more proactive measures like installing CCTV cameras on campuses, implementing ID-based entry systems, and setting up complaint boxes for anonymous reporting.
It's about creating a safer environment and making it easier for victims to come forward without fear. The Supreme Court also issued some pretty strong guidelines back in 2009, really pushing for a multi-pronged strategy to combat ragging.
They emphasize the importance of awareness campaigns, sensitization programs for students and faculty, and establishing clear reporting mechanisms.
It's all about creating a zero-tolerance environment, sending the message that ragging will not be accepted or condoned.
Now, let's switch gears and talk about something a bit more positive. India's growing focus on inland water transport, or IWT. The recent inauguration of the Inland Waterways Terminal at Jogighopa in Assam is a testament to this commitment.
That's a strategic location right on the Brahmaputra River, connecting India to Bhutan and Bangladesh.
Exactly. This terminal isn't just about trade. It's about strengthening regional ties and boosting connectivity in line with India's neighborhood-first policy.
So, just to be clear, IWT involves using rivers and canals for transportation, and it's a game changer for moving people and goods efficiently and cost-effectively.
It reduces congestion on our roads, lowers transportation costs, and is generally a much greener mode of transport.
And India's taking it seriously, creating a proper legislative framework to govern IWT. The Inland Waterways Authority of India Act of 1985 was the first step, establishing the IWAI as the main regulatory body.
Think of the IWAI as the conductor of the IWT orchestra, responsible for developing and maintaining those waterways.
And then came the National Waterways Act of 2016, which declared a whopping 111 waterways as national waterways.
This move really put IWT on the map, highlighting its significance in India's transport network. Some prominent examples are NW1, the Ganga-Bhagirathi-Hooghly River System, and NW2, the Brahmaputra.
Those are major arteries for trade and commerce. And let's not forget the Inland Vessels Act of 2021, which replaced a century-old law and really streamlined the rules for safe and efficient navigation.
It was a much-needed update, ensuring that India's IWT sector operates under modern and internationally aligned regulations.
So what are the benefits of investing in IWT? We've talked about its efficiency and cost effectiveness, but there's more to it, right?
Absolutely. The growth in cargo traffic on national waterways has been exponential over the past decade.
That's a clear indication that businesses are recognizing the advantages of using waterways for transportation.
It's also a huge boost for tourism. The government is pushing initiatives like the Cruise Port mission, which aims to significantly boost river cruise tourism by 2029.
Imagine cruising down the Ganges, experiencing India's rich culture and heritage from a whole new perspective.
It's a unique and sustainable way to promote tourism. And coming back to the Jogighopa terminal, it's got a special status. It's a port of call under the Protocol on Inland Water Transit and Trade, or PIWT&T, between India and Bangladesh.
So it's a crucial stop for ships navigating those inland waterways, facilitating seamless trade and transport between the two countries.
Exactly. It's all part of India's vision to leverage IWT for economic growth, regional immigration, and sustainable development.
Speaking of market dynamics, let's talk about something that affects all of us as consumers. Predatory pricing. It's a sneaky tactic that can ultimately harm competition and leave consumers worse off in the long run.
You got it. Imagine a local store suddenly slashing prices drastically, driving all the competitors out of business.
Sounds great for consumers at first, right? Those bargain prices.
But that's exactly how predatory pricing works. The CCI defines it as selling goods below the cost of production to eliminate rivals.
So it's not about genuine competition. It's about creating a monopoly.
Exactly. And the CCI is currently trying to refine how they determine the actual costs involved in these situations because it can get pretty complex.
It's like a game of cat and mouse, trying to figure out if a company is genuinely offering competitive prices or intentionally undercutting the market to gain an unfair advantage.
And it's not just about predatory pricing. There's a whole spectrum of anti-competitive practices out there. We've got things like price fixing, where competitors get together and decide to set artificially high prices.
That's basically cheating the system, and it robs consumers of the benefits of a truly competitive market.
Then there's patent misuse. Instead of using patents to foster innovation, companies can use them to stifle competition and prevent new products from entering the market.
It's like holding back progress for their own benefit.
And let's not forget about collusive bidding. This happens when companies conspire to rig the bidding process, often in government contracts, to ensure they win, even if they're not the best or most cost-effective option.
That's not just unethical, it's often illegal and undermines fair competition. And then there's tying and bundling, which we talked about earlier.
That's where a company leverages its dominance in one market to force consumers to buy something else they might not want or need.
Like those software bundles where you're stuck with a bunch of programs you'll never use. So how does India try to ensure a level playing field and protect consumers from these shady tactics?
We've got a solid legal framework in place. The Competition Act of 2002 is a cornerstone, laying down the rules for fair competition and empowering the CCI to act as the watchdog.
It's like a referee ensuring everyone plays by the rules.
And we also have the Consumer Protection Act of 2019, which really strengthens consumer rights and provides mechanisms for regressal.
So it's not just about businesses, it's about empowering consumers to fight back against unfair practices.
And of course, intellectual property laws are also important. They protect innovation, but they can also be misused, so there are provisions to prevent that.
It's about finding that balance between protecting intellectual property rights and fostering a competitive market that benefits everyone.
Now let's shift gears to a topic that reminds us of the ongoing pursuit of a just and equitable world. World Day of Social Justice, observed annually on February 20th.
It's a day to reflect on the progress we've made, but also to acknowledge the work that still needs to be done to create a fairer and more inclusive society for all.
It's not just about symbolic gestures. It's about action, about translating those principles of social justice into concrete policies and programs that make a tangible difference in people's lives.
The United Nations defines social justice as a fundamental principle for peaceful and prosperous coexistence within and among nations. It's about creating a world where everyone has equal opportunities and rights, regardless of their background or circumstances.
Exactly. And the UN has outlined 5 key principles that form the foundation of social justice: equity, participation, diversity, human rights, and access.
It's like a roadmap for creating a more just and equitable world.
Equity recognizes that different individuals and groups face varying challenges and have different needs. It's about creating a level playing field by addressing those disparities and ensuring fairness in access to opportunities and resources.
It's about ensuring that everyone has a fair shot at success, regardless of their starting point.
Participation emphasizes the importance of active and meaningful involvement of all individuals and groups in shaping decisions that affect their lives and communities.
It's about having a voice, being heard, and having the power to influence policies and systems.
Diversity celebrates and values the richness of human differences. It's about fostering a society that not only tolerates but actively embraces those differences.
It's about recognizing that our differences make us stronger, not weaker.
Human rights are those fundamental freedoms and entitlements that are inherent to every human being.
They're universal, indivisible, and inalienable. They form the bedrock of a just and equitable society.
And access ensures that everyone has equal opportunities to thrive and succeed.
It's about removing barriers to education, healthcare, employment, and other essential resources that allow people to live a fulfilling life.
It's about creating a world where everyone has a chance to reach their full potential.
And these principles of social justice aren't just lofty ideals, they're deeply embedded in the Indian Constitution.
Absolutely. The preamble itself enshrines social, economic, and political justice as fundamental aspirations of the Indian Republic.
And specific articles within the Constitution translate those aspirations into concrete legal provisions. For instance, Article 39A guarantees free legal aid to the disadvantaged.
That upholds the principle of equity by ensuring everyone has access to justice, regardless of their financial means.
And Article 46 mandates special provisions for the educational and economic advancement of scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and weaker sections.
It's about promoting their participation and inclusion in society, recognizing that we're all in this together.
And our fundamental rights, like Article 23, which prohibits human trafficking, and Article 24, which bans child labor, reflect India's commitment to upholding human rights and protecting the dignity of all.
It's about creating a society where everyone feels safe, respected, and valued.
And it's not just about constitutional provisions. India has a whole bunch of government schemes designed to promote social justice. One example is the Pradhan Mantri Anusachit Jati Abhyuday Yojana, or PMAJ, which aims to uplift scheduled caste communities.
It provides various forms of support, including skill development, entrepreneurship assistance, and educational empowerment.
It's about giving them the tools they need to overcome historical disadvantages and build a brighter future.
Then there's the National Action for Mechanized Sanitation Ecosystem, or NAMASC, which aims to improve the lives of sanitation workers, a group that's often overlooked and undervalued.
It's about promoting mechanized sanitation practices and ensuring they have access to Social Security benefits.
It's about recognizing the dignity of all work, no matter how humble it might seem.
Absolutely. And let's not forget the support for marginalized individuals for livelihood and enterprise, or SMILE, which focuses on rehabilitating and empowering transgender individuals and those engaged in begging.
It's about providing them with opportunities for skill development, education, and economic independence, enabling them to live a life of dignity and self-reliance.
It's about recognizing that everyone deserves a chance to contribute to society and reach their full potential.
Now let's zoom in on a specific sector that's been undergoing some scrutiny. Urban Cooperative Banks, or UCBs. They play a vital role, especially in those semi-urban and urban areas.
They're those community-focused banks providing financial services to local businesses and individuals.
But there have been some concerns lately about their stability and governance. Remember the RBI's action against New India Cooperative Bank?
Yeah, that's a bit of a wake-up call for the sector, highlighting the need for some reforms and maybe some closer monitoring.
So let's unpack what UCBs are all about. Legally speaking, they're cooperative societies, registered under either the State Cooperative Societies Act or the Multi-State Cooperative Societies Act of 2002.
So they're operating within that cooperative framework, where members pool resources and share ownership.
Right, but when it comes to regulations, it gets a bit tricky. UCBs are subject to dual regulation, overseen by both the RBI and those state cooperative departments.
So it's like having two bosses, which can sometimes lead to confusion and maybe even some conflicting directives.
Exactly, and that's been a point of discussion whether this dual regulatory structure is the most effective way to supervise these banks.
So what are some of the specific issues that have been plaguing UCBs?
One major challenge is low capitalization. Many UCBs lack those sufficient capital reserves to withstand financial shocks or economic downturns.
It's like building a house on a shaky foundation. It might look fine for a while, but it's vulnerable.
Then there's the governance issue. We've seen cases of fraud, mismanagement, and a lack of transparency, which obviously erodes public trust.
And if people lose faith in a bank, that's a recipe for trouble.
Absolutely. And let's not forget about those high non-performing assets, or NPAs, which basically mean those loans that haven't been repaid. A high level of NPAs can really drag down a bank's financial health.
It's like having a leaky bucket. You keep pouring money in, but it's just draining out through those bad loans.
So, recognizing these challenges, the government and regulatory authorities have taken some steps to try to clean up the UCB sector and make it more robust.
It's about creating a more stable and resilient UCB sector, ensuring they can continue to serve those communities and contribute to financial inclusion.
Right, and the RBI's new Prompt Corrective Action, or PCA, framework is a good example. It imposes restrictions on those financially weak banks, kind of like putting them on probation and helping them get back on track.
It's like a safety net to prevent them from going belly up and potentially creating a bigger problem for the financial system.
And we also have the National Urban Cooperative Finance and Development Corporation, or NUCFDC.
Now, that's a mouthful. What exactly does NUCFDC do?
It's basically a national-level organization designed to support and enhance UCB operations across the country. Think of it as a mentor and a resource center.
So they provide guidance, training, maybe even some financial assistance to help UCBs improve their governance, manage risks better, and ultimately perform better.
Precisely. And to further strengthen regulatory oversight, we also have the Banking Regulation